back to the stream. I know I made a joke about him, but I didn't think it would summon him here. Nymeria is going to be joining us, and Middlecourt is here as well. AXIZ versus V3, kicking it off. Well, first time they played was a bit of a speed run.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on the desk with such a vaunted individual, such high-profile people. As you can see, I'm definitely not Nymeria. I'm here as a substitute Oak, and I've been called in very last minute to talk about these teams, because AXIZ and V3, they are both development rosters. They have both taken very different trajectories in the split, but they're both bottom of the standings. And this game, for me, is actually quite important to determine where that trajectory goes from here. Because, I mean, I look at V3 and I look at what AXIZ have done, and I think, you could have been this, and they just haven't.
Yeah, and even then, AXIZ not had the best time. First 2 days, good. And the rest of the game, basically V3 as well. So, I don't know. This one was a particularly fun game to watch, I will say, in day 2. It was the second fastest game of the season. I'm not imagining it's going to be the same speed. I feel like V3 have got a little bit better over the season, and AXIZ, well, they've kind of fallen off a bit.
Yeah, that's sort of where I'm looking at this. This is an opportunity for both of these teams to stop the massive loss streaks that they're currently on. AXIZ 0-6, obviously V3 0-8, and really arrest the fall that is currently happening through their seasons. At the moment, we've got 3 of these teams that are around the sort of bottom level of the table, and obviously 2 drop down out of playoffs, and that last one goes through in 6th place. So this is going to be very important as a matchup, not just today, but throughout the rest of the season, for determining who does get that final playoff spot.
Yeah. And all you need to do is get your crap together just enough. It's actually not that high bar to get into playoffs, because the Hawks have miraculously fallen apart. And it's not to go too much onto that last game, but the Hawks were a roster that was meant to be very strong. The fact that they were kind of taking up one of those almost guaranteed top 3 spots, and then suddenly there's just a little gap in there, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, is big news for both of these teams. Because if you even manage to just sneak into the first round of playoffs, have a best of 5 experience with one of these teams, that's good development opportunity for both of them going into Summit. This is actually quite important for the players and getting them real-time experience on stage.
I do like that D word there, development, because obviously Hawks a little bit less, but both these rosters, I think, are development rosters. We've got some newer players coming into the LJL. Obviously, V3 bringing up a load of their academy side. AXIZ also pulling a couple players out of academy, also importing a couple guys over from Korea. So really just trying to make sure that these rosters mesh. And I don't think we were looking at spring for either of these rosters, maybe at V3 a little bit more. But like Alex was saying, this is all about development, getting the improvement that you need, and then maybe we're looking at a stronger summer for these teams.
Yeah, get ready to redirect this one. It could be a bit shocking. We have to talk about Zeri. It has been a very strong pickup for AXIZ, and it is a big part of what basically ended the game against V3. Has Zeri's power decreased, or do you feel like people have just maybe wised up how to beat it?
So just a reminder, what patch are we on? Are we on 12.3 or 12.4?
12.4.
12.4. Okay, so basically everything that Zeri has been hit. So her right click does less damage, her Q does less damage, her ult is doing slightly less as well. Basically everything across the board was taken down a notch in power. She's still very strong because her gameplay hasn't changed. If you don't draft a team that can shut her down, she will end the fight eventually, even if it takes 20 to 30 seconds of popping in and out the fight with huge amounts of move speed. So against less coordinated teams, which I think it's fair to say both of these teams are, I don't think you can allow Zeri to go through. I think you're kind of praying at that point that you don't make a mistake, which allows her to get that one miracle team fight. So while you do bring that up, I think that's actually very important for both of these teams.
I think it's also been a key pick for Sanctu. It's been one of those champions that we have seen him pop off on, and he has sort of been this honey replacement on the AXIZ roster. Obviously not performing at quite the same level, but definitely AD carries need to be focused when you are playing against this team.
And talking about kind of key components of AXIZ, they were very fond of Smite Top. We finally saw them move away from it. Is that the direction you want to stay in?
So hold on, Alex. I do actually need to interrupt you here because I have actually just seen that they are subbing out Yellow Yoshi, and it's actually going to be told to playing in the top lane for AXIZ. So clearly something's not been working for them.
Quick, to Wikipedia.
Give me the OPGG of this man.
So, yeah, but the thing about AXIZ was that when I was talking in the first point about saying V3, you could have been this in terms of AXIZ, but because AXIZ hard committed to an identity, and I think that's very easy to just put that on rails and say, look, this might not be the best take on the meta, but it's our take on the meta, and we're going to practice it and be more familiar with it than a team which on paper might be stronger than us, and try and catch them with a quick march. Now, with support items being changed, with the amount of smites that you have in your team, giving you less gold, with objective bounties being hit as well in regards to the amount of smites on, or the amount of support items on the enemy team, it is much harder to play off, to go off that playstyle. It might have just been pushed out of the meta at this point. Either way, I think if you're subbing out Yellow Yoshi, I don't know if that signifies that they'd rather play around a more conventional top laner and more conventional top lane picks. That's something which we're yet to see. Very interesting change that we're really being hit by last minute substitutions today, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to see how this one does shape it up. We are going to be jumping into pick and ban, so I'll leave the cast with the capable hands of you two. And I don't know if you're going to be role playing as Oak still, or if you're going to bring yourself up.
I still have the post-it. There we go.
But either way, take it away, guys. Let's get into pick and bans.
So
suddenly
Oak,
there was quiet.
pick and ban on our screens. Already had a fair few champions taken off the board, and the Nautilus first pick for AXIZ, definitely not something I'm used to seeing.
No, I mean, I like Nautilus alongside the Aphelios, and normally we do see the Aphelios and the Jinx traded off within the first round. In fact, actually, I was just looking at some LEC stats, and apparently in the last week in that region, Jinx was played 10 out of 10 games and didn't get beyond that pick there, Red 2. So yeah. LJL following up along that too. I mean, once you see that Nautilus, I often do think you're probably going to pick the Aphelios. You probably don't want to pick the Jinx at that point. It allows you to fight at level 1, allows you to fight at level 2. It's there as well. So I think AXIZ has been quite telegraphed. I'm just a bit weirded out by the pick order.
Yeah, a little bit of a strange one, but we're getting there in the end. We have seen the Aphelios can get outranged by the Jinx in a lot of scenarios, so we'll have to see if AXIZ are actually able to use it effectively as Sanctuary can part this one well. Rise, another one of these low-range champions that possibly gets outranged. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Going back to the LeBlanc, this is a pick that he's probably looked the most comfortable on out of all the champions he's played.
Yeah, and historically, he's had a very good LeBlanc too. I think back to when he first came into the league, when he was replacing Rocky on Burning Core, and he had some pretty bad Lulu games because the team wanted him to play supportive, and it just didn't work. But this player has historically had a good LeBlanc into what seems to be a playable draft. Interesting now to see if V3 can have themselves a bit of a hero moment. They're really looking for someone to stand up being counted for. And at least Yu-Gi-Oh! On one of their comfort picks has a chance to do that.
And I like that you brought that up because we have seen V3, and we've talked about it a lot, a team that's lacked that identity, and we really haven't even seen the signs of someone who potentially could step up. So hopefully in this game versus a team that they have a decent chance of actually beating, we do start to see that. Second phase of bans coming out there. AXIZ targeting a couple of these supports, don't want to give Dress Code any more safety, and it's actually a couple of jungle bans from V3.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go focus on the support bans because I look at what the Nautilus can do and what particularly the Rise can do as well, is that if you're sat here as the Jinx under tower, there is a good chance that a Realm Warp or a hook comes out of nowhere and makes your life very, very difficult. With the Thresh, at least you have some peel, but it's not going to peel against the Nautilus ultimate. Now the question is, AXIZ, you have yourself the ability to break up traditional battle lines with something like that Realm Warp and start fights off on your terms. Is the Thresh going to be enough to save Dress Code on the Jinx?
It's a difficult one with that Hecarim locked
that makes
in
it
for
much
Swamp.
easier, right?
Yeah. Definitely ups the difficulty level.
Because I think that Hecarim is probably the strongest jungler on the patch. Now, this will bring in a question which we'll visit in the early game, because the early game is so important when you're against Hecarim. Hecarim doesn't want to fight before level 4, level 5, level 6.
Ooh.
Someone who does is an Akshan, though, so if you're trying to disrupt this Hecarim, you have to deal with one of the strongest early solo laners in the game in that top lane action, it looks like. So AXIZ quickly recognizing, let's fight around this early game and save this Hecarim for the mid game.
And this is a different look for AXIZ entirely. This isn't a champion that I really would have seen Yellow Yoshi playing, told to be a bit more carry-oriented when we did see them in Academy. Washidai, though, going to go towards this Camille, a pick that can actually get on top of the Akshan if he ever oversteps.
Well, that's the whole top side of the map. You've got the Camille ult, you've got the LeBlanc jumping forward, you've got Lee Sin tagging in with the Safeguard and the Sonic Wave. So while this is probably exactly the opposite of what we've seen AXIZ do before, going away from let's leave top lane alone to the most early game lane dominant champion in that top lane in the Akshan, V3, they have given themselves the tools to shut down the strong point of AXIZ in that top side.
And they've also got some tools that scale pretty well later on into the game that can match up against something like the Ryze, against something like the Aphelios, the LeBlanc and the Lee Sin. They want to get it going early, but Cho'Gath ult with a 3-second cooldown from Washidai on this Camille, and then obviously all the damage that Dress Code is going to be able to put out is pretty immense, honestly.
So now, kind of looking at the entire competitions, we want to set up ourselves some expectations. Look forward.
Yes, of course.
What are we expecting these teams to achieve with their competitions, and are they going to achieve it? Like I said, I think there is a huge onus on the Lee Sin to do something in the early game. I think that against Hecarim, if you allow the Akshan to kind of allow them to hand off the baton to them, so the Hecarim can team fight in the mid game, it's going to be quite difficult because there isn't that much to save the Jinx. So, early game focus from V3, make sure the Hecarim doesn't get rolling for free. On the other side is AXIZ. It's the opposite of that, right? You know, you want to survive through to the point where you can start diving onto this Jinx and make their life very hard in team fights.
And I don't know if Dress Code is going to be the person to stand up against that, because we have we've had issues with this player. The transition that he's had from not being in the LJL to getting into the LJL has been a difficult one. But V3 putting a lot of their hopes on him, and hopefully he can step up. We're into game now. AXIZ on the blue side, V3 on the red. This is such an important battle at the bottom of the table. Let's get it.
As we said, you know, one stray win could actually see you into playoffs at this point. V3, if they win today, they move up from winless to actually tied into that 7th, 8th spot, because the Hawks, as we were saying, have done so poorly themselves in this split. So both of these teams have more stakes in this bottom of the table matchup than you would potentially recognize coming into it. So now that this is arguably the highest stake match that they're going to be playing, because these are their local competition in the standings, what are these players going to do with that added level of potential tension?
It's a difficult question, and it's one that they haven't really been able to answer so far this split. Nothing too crazy going on the level 1 though, Nymera. Both junglers starting on opposite sides of the map. Unica pathing towards the bot side, wants to enable Dress Code, wants to enable Hotel as soon as possible.
So there was one thing which happened very, very early into the game as we kind of swept onto the map, was that LeBlanc actually went towards the top side, potentially looking to see if the Akshan was stood in that front bush, because actually as a ranged top laner, you will often stand there and try and deny some... Oh my gosh, no. We were talking about early game, talking about presence, surviving through into everything. I mean, Swamp has made an absolute mess of this. Is going to have to burn Smite on the first camp.
Yeah, and it was already going to be at a disadvantage against the Lee Sin early game. This wasted time going to compound that a fair bit.
But this is big brain, because now he's not going to be in the place you expect him to be on the first. It's great. I mean, I truly cannot understand the depth of these huge brains these LJL players are bringing. I mean, obviously, it is not the best situation to be in as a Hecarim. Your first clear is where you want to be least. It's the place where you want to get out of it as quickly as possible. And you've kept yourself there for another 10 to 20 seconds, which in the early game does become a big threat.
Well, it's a nice, safe place to be. Unica probably not going to be invading you too much, so just chill in the jungle. Have a little bit of a fun time. Toltu pushing up in this top lane. I think this was probably to be expected, right? You were talking about Akshan being one of these strong early game champions, so getting wave priority, not too much of a surprise.
So, no early attempts on towards that top lane. Of course, if you shut down a ranged top laner, normally you think, okay, well, they're going to start falling behind even more so at this point. I'm actually interested in seeing what build path they go towards. We'll check in on that as the game goes through, because when Akshan was strong at the start of the season, before his passive got hit, before a couple of the items got hit, he was going towards stuff like the shield bow. Of course, he's really, really strong with stuff like the Kraken Slayer, because he pumps out so many multi-hits, and it means that Camille, if you don't hit everything and shut him down very quickly, well, much like you can shut down Aphelios by chaining your CC with this lane, it's going to be quite difficult to out-damage that Akshan if you don't hit everything cleanly onto him.
TP channeled here from Washdai to get back towards the top side of the map. That ruby crystal in inventory. I swear, I never see this on Camille's, really paying a lot of respect to Toltu in the punishment that he can throw out. We did pan down to the bot lane just a little bit briefly there, and we actually saw Dresscode and Hetel getting the shove in on Sanctuary and Dicey, which I don't really feel like is the way that matchup is supposed to go.
So you can fight level 1, but I think with the Thresh, with the Thresh, often you're kind of sat there and you'll trade hook for hook, and it becomes a bit more of an even matchup. I'm more interested in seeing what happens post level 6 mark. I think that's the point where things can get very, very, very dangerous. Also, when flashes are blown, when we get stuff towards the Hex Flash coming in, potentially we can see a change in fortune stand out. But either way, if there's no fighting, Jinx has the AoE rockets, tends to favor that side of the matchup, which allows you to do whatever. But in this case, Wave was bouncing back and hook trade for hook, just like we said.
That was a strong response there from Hetel. Still takes a fair trade of damage. Sanctuary and Dicey just going to re-push this one out. Drake spawning in 15 seconds, but neither of these junglers seem particularly interested in it just yet. Although saying that, we do see pings coming out from Unica.
Yes, so, but then you have to ask, is it important if AXIZ give up a first dragon? Well, actually, given how poorly the jungle players started the Swamp on the Hecarim, and how much emphasis we put towards the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game, going towards, strong team fights coming into maybe the first Herald, second, third dragon, I think AXIZ are doing okay on that front. I don't think V3 have come out of the gates particularly hot off the press, and I think that at this point now you're starting to look at this Hecarim and you think, well, especially with that tier and inventory, which we saw also in the last game with the Muramana coming into it, AXIZ are more than happy to ride this out, use their strong early lanes to just kind of coast into a comfortable mid-game power spike.
I was gonna call out that tier because
I have eagle eyes today.
You're just like reading my mind or something, and it's not really a build that we do see all that often. We have seen it a couple of times, but it is often a lot more of that chem tank, that slightly tankier style build. And personally, I feel like AXIZ have already got enough damage with these 3 sort of carry lanes. Maybe are they indexing a bit too much?
It is a very cost-efficient item for what it gives you, and it does give you some extra CDR as well, or rather ability haste. Like it is a good item on Hecarim, and when you get to go towards your tier 2 boots, which gives you the ability to fight while your trough is still kind of there with the tier. I don't think this is awful, but put it this way, I wouldn't play this in the VCS or the LPL, but because we're here in the land of the LJL, you can kind of get away with it, particularly against these teams which are not that explosive early game. You're going to ride out Hecarim's traditional kind of dip in power with the tier as well and just come through to an even bigger spike in the mid game.
It's a slower paced build that is going to reward you, like you were talking about, in that mid game once you've got that full Muramana transformation coming out there.
That seems to be the way I've seen that build as well. Of course, most of the time, as you're saying, kind of stick towards the Chem Tank, Dead Man's, Force of Nature, and Force moving towards the mid lane as that's a hook. It does nothing.
Just a hook.
I was kind of sad. I was like, do I want to get excited about this? It's probably not going to happen. I'll try. You know what? I'll try getting excited for once in this early game.
Pretend a little bit.
We'll pretend a little bit. So, speaking of, getting excited about things happening in the early game, there hasn't really been that much. And again, I just feel like this favors what AXIZ want to do. So,
yes,
of course, this is all hinged around the fact that AXIZ will know how to mid-game team fight. Or actually, in the last matchup which they had, of course, they had Sangshu on the Zeri, which allowed them to mid-game team fight and to kind of blow out those fights when Zeri got enough move speed to chase down the rest of those kills. But in this match, it is about hitting that initial engage, making sure you get onto the Jinx, and making sure the Jinx cannot fight. We're yet to see a single team fight in this game yet, so that's going to be the thing which I'm checking next. But AXIZ, they've done the first steps 1 and 2 of their plan just fine. Can they find anything after that point?
That feels so bad at Swamp there. Do you ever have it where you'll gank a lane as a jungler and it's literally just been warded? Like, you get a very efficient clear, but you know that if you were 10 seconds earlier, you could probably make that work. 8 minutes on the clock, so Swamp starting up the Herald.
That's a red buff diff right there, right from the start of the game. Imagine what could have happened if you hadn't reset that. And all of that. So we have level 6s hit. We have Akshan already pushing in that wave top and answering towards that Herald. So with V3 answering with their positioning on Washdai to go towards that Herald, they're going to miss half a wave under the tower for the Herald Star. But again, we're just talking about very micro things. We can probably take a step back at this point. You know, we've already visited the stakes for this matchup. We put some names on the table and said, look, these are the players we want to see perform. We've talked about how Dress Code needs to survive by hook or by crook. That will have to be the case. And on the other side, potentially Ujo and Unica looking for Megaman, looking for the first blood.
Caught out, potentially still has the flash, will use it to get away. But the mobile mage in the mid lane does have that phase rush. Oh, that was a super mega death rocket! Dress Code, that was beautiful.
Oh, he is dressed to kill in this game. 1-0 gets the rocket snipe, and that's a welcome reprieve from the very low energy we've had in this game so far, and the jinx, that target which AXIZ have painted onto them so heavily, so brightly in this game, has gotten a lot more gold to their name with that first blood, and that's starting to look a little bit dangerous, because if Jinx does get to a point of power and you don't manage to shut them down, as we said, they are going to be the core of this team comp.
And again, for Megaman as well on this rise now, doesn't have the flash, still ended up dying, so he's going to be even more vulnerable.
And this is a momentary lapse in vision control from V3, from AXIZ rather, because you see top side of the river, they managed to, you managed to get some vision into that pixel brush, but they just didn't see that ward over the wall. Megaman looking to contest through that channel. I'm not sure I'm not exactly sure what he was planning to do. Maybe he was just planning to be in position for a potential Herald start from the other side, but no, V3's mid jungle find the pick off, and the Lee Sin LeBlanc, that is one of our strongest mid jungle duos in the game, finds themselves something for it with a little help from the bot lane friends.
And you know what? Unica and Ujo, probably a couple of the more experienced members on this V3 roster. It's always good to see them pairing up and getting stuff done. Although it's not all sunshine and rainbows for V3, because in the top lane, Tol2 has expanded that CS lead pretty significantly.
They have it. Yes, there is. And actually, there's a lane swap coming out here too. So watch out. Oh, misses the hook. Ooh.
Oh, dear. Oh, that's a beautiful dodge on the unstoppable onslaught. Onslaught of Shadows, I should say. That was pretty nice.
Okay, so you know how you were talking about, oh man, you were too good at spotting that tier earlier. I completely inted that one though, because I was like, wow, he's used the hook shot already. And it's like, no, he actually,
no, he hasn't.
No, he actually just hasn't. But Watchdai has been denied a little bit more. Tol2 using the ignite there, traded for a cleanse.
Ooh, still got a fair bit of damage on this Aphelios and a fair bit of health as well. So able to defend this, and now Watchidai's being hooked onto. Ujo diving into the backline. The Robo is coming through as well. No one has gone down just yet. And no one will fall. V3 successfully defend that inner tower.
So both teams commit towards a cross map. They're trying to make use of, because I mean, when you cross map with someone like an Aphelios, you need to be so worried about how quickly he kills towers. So AXIZ continue the push on top side. Both sides, though, on the quote-unquote weak side of that play, try to fight things off. Going to go back to both sides, actually, because, again, we see Tol2 taking a large chunk out of both of these. What happens after this?
Wait, did he get a kill here?
He flashes in, but Unica's still there for the safeguard and the quick kick away. That is absolutely instrumental, actually. So both teams going for aggressive plays on the weak side of the map, and somehow nothing comes of it on either side.
Because, of course, it doesn't.
Because of course it doesn't. We're not actually allowed to do things here in the LJL. You need to get like paperwork signed in triplicate, do it 2 weeks in advance, this whole process. So we're still waiting for that. 12 minutes into the game, we've only had that first kill. And we should probably check in with what's happening with the whole map. So we have lost one tower. There are a couple of plates been gone on other towers outside of that, though. But as far as the calling card for AXIZ, you need to survive the early game, and your action can help you do that. I feel like that has worked out well for them, even with that first blood going down. I know we've revisited a lot. It's just the one thing I can think of and keep returning to, because it's just what's written on. It's so largely written on both of these teams' descriptions. In terms of, like, we're diving onto your Jinx, and the other one is like, Jinx needs to survive. That's what we got to track.
That kill was the thing that's happened this game so far.
Yes.
As AXIZ do another thing, taking down that Mountain Drake. Both teams going to be at one apiece.
It's much better than teams not doing things.
I'm a big fan of League of Legends when people are playing it.
Sometimes we struggle to do that in the LJL. Of course, we had the infamous Sengoku Burning Core. We had apparently the even more disastrous, was it Hawks CGA, that one?
I feel like it, or something like that. Basically, every game that me and RMC have cast together has been interesting. Actually, just RMC. I feel like he's got really lucky with some of these games.
At this point, it's like it's like every game becomes like a random mediocre cast because of the level of gameplay. Because I mean, as much as that, you look at that gameplay and it's like no cast can bring that up. It's like try as you might. It's like I don't know whether he's signed like a pact or like I don't know like was it Polyphemus or was it Sisyphus in the Boulder? Well, Random Indicaster has become that in the LJL. We had to bring him down a peg. It's like, you're too entertaining.
Sisyphus.
We need to give you the worst games in the history of the league.
That's the guy from Hades, right? Sisyphus?
It is. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Turns out it's based on actual mythology.
No way.
Crazy.
No way. That's a damn good game, actually. I need to
really
play that again.
Yeah, it's I'm a big roguelike fan in general. I love myself some of those. Wait, what the heck? What did I just get pinged for? I just had a noise in the background. I'm like, have I just been disconnected from something? Because I think I know it's a Google Calendar. I'm like, it's not a boop I'm used to hearing. So I'm like, what's breaking on my PC and what do I need to go
do you know what? Don't even get me started. Like boops that I'm not used to are terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. But this top lane Inhibitor used to a couple of boops in this game, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Getting a very free ultimate there out of Swamp. Not sure about that one, buddy.
Yeah. Possibly hasn't ganked mid lane too much, so doesn't forgotten what LeBlanc can do. Yeah, she can just like dash away on a 8-second cooldown. That's a thing that's possible.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's an ult invested and not much gain for it. Maybe that lets V3 do something else on the map.
But there are only so many times I can say, ooh,
yeah,
this is going to come down to a diving team fight at some point. We're just waiting for that. We haven't seen setup for the objectives. It's a dragon apiece. The Herald's already gone down. We've got a second one spawning at some point. I really hesitate to commit to anything about what these teams are doing on the map. We do have both bot lanes coming into that, into the mid lane now. Once some of these side lanes have started to become longer lanes because those first turrets have been taken down. But honestly, it just seems like all systems go for both teams. The Jinx has done some stuff. The Hecarim survived. What else do you want us to talk about? This is V3 AXIZ, baby.
We're in this horrible position where, like you're saying, both teams have got what they want, and what they want is not fighting right now. We did see the chem tank actually picked up for Swamp though, so still going to be fairly tanky on this Hecarim. Maybe that tier is going into a Fimbulwinter, into that Winter's Approach instead of the Muramana. I don't know if that's an option.
I was wondering whether that'd be the case, because of course you have two mobilizers in your kit, but you're only going to get the shield for the first part. I do think that the burst is, I mean, the thing is, if you hit that, I mean, long lane action, by the way, really, really dangerous, but we'll have to keep our eyes on that one as it goes forward. But yeah, I think that when your MO is let's dive and kill the Jinx, you don't really want to be, well, I mean, I think that the Muramana helps you with that goal, right? So I think that I can understand that. Spider-Man cancelled.
Interrupting the hook there as Sanctuary just get played back. Dicey is very, very low, but here comes Swamp diving onto that Jinx like we talked about, but Unica kicks him away. It's actually a kill picked up for AXIZ here as Dress Code taken down by the final hit from that Graviton. Washidai teeping into the fight as Dicey lands another hook, grabbing them under the tower as here comes Told To as well. It's an all-out brawl for no reason in the mid lane, and it's going in AXIZ's favor. Washidai tries to hook shot away, but will not make it out. Unica wants to get that blue buff and will just escape.
Why does this fight happen? Why? What is the purpose of this? I mean, I sit there like, ooh, wow, both of these bot lanes have moved through to mid, they're wave clearing, and then it's one failed hook, it's cancelled. I mean, you do have that interaction where, the most recent displacement takes precedence, and Dicey mistimes his own hook trying to get out of this, and you can see it's a good cancel, it's a good punish from the side of V3's bot lane, but you just don't have the room to play with this. You're being shoved to that top side. You didn't have adequate vision onto what Swamp was doing on the Hecarim. And then after this point, it is a series of, I'd best go clean that up. That's the only way I can describe this fight. It's like, I guess I'll go flash in as the FLS. Oh, wait, hang on, there's a Camille now. I should probably go finish off that kill. It is just the entirety of this, but one team has a much better cleanup comp than the other because of the action. But seriously, that's a real bro blue blue buff save at the end of that. It's upset because the action ult hits pretty much everything you can think of, and the blue buff tanks it up for him.
That never actually ended up being a 5v5 either. That was literally just like tag team wrestling. Like people going, yeah, my turn. Yeah, I'm jumping in. Yeah, let's go. Woo, woo, woo.
I didn't realize that the League new fighting game with the tag system had already been released. We're getting a exclusive first look at it here over in the LJL. And let's go praise some of the people in that fight, though, because I think that seriously, Tol2 on the action did a good job of navigating his way to that fight, clearing up those last couple of kills. Only gets the one. Would have been lovely to get that second kill and get some of that gold away from Unica. I'm actually not sure if it would have been a shutdown because of the level of parity between these teams anyway. But we are left with you, Joe, buddy.
Don't want to be jumping into Megabin just yet. We've not quite reached that late game rise fantasy, but still at level 13, he's going to be pumping out a hell of a lot of damage. Sanchu defending the mid lane solo, but will be able to stand tall as Dicey's here to support.
So, but while the mid lane is being pushed in by the Jinx Thresh, I think that they've given themselves something to play around with that, and with the Herald that is put more into their favor. The side lanes are very much being controlled by AXIZ. The rise of the Realm Warp, the action being able to push up and 1v1 anyone on the map right now, is giving a degree of freedom to AXIZ to collapse onto that mid lane. I'm not sure if Yujo was just setting up his ult to have a mimic there, but I'm not sure if that was just a place plan. We'll ignore that one.
Big fan of it. Big fan of it.
I mean, big fan of this.
Trying to make it happen. Yeah. Trying to make it happen. But we have had things happen. 4-on-4 now. Just about to crest that sort of 20-minute mark. So Baron comes up available. Both these AD carries have actually got to relatively decent points. 2 items on dress code and 2 items on Sanchu. Opting for that collector on the Aphelios, which is nice.
Okay, but we can talk about that.
As much.
We can,
okay.
But I'm actually much more interested. Oh, wait, okay, so first we might need to be worried about what's happening in bot lane. As Tol2 is going to get 1v2. That's an
Hextech ultimation from Washidai. Unica here as well, and I don't think the Akshan is diving away out of this one, buddy.
Okay, so I actually just lost all audio there for like a straight second, so I have no idea what was happening with that. I'm like, sweet, that's a kill. I was like, sweet, wow, we're gonna get ourselves a 2v1 in the bot lane, and Tol2 does go down. At least V3 kind of understand that they can also use their mobility to close onto these players. We already talked about the top side of the map being able to close down the action, and this is the first time that we've really seen come into this game at this point. But you know, you're mentioning Sanchu picking up the collector. Of course, we know that on picking up the first kill, very, very important. It's going to be good onto the Jinx. If you're hitting anyone else, probably pretty bad, but the Jinx is the prime target with that. I'm actually, though, more interested about something which I've been sitting and thinking about this for a while, about a minute, which is a long time in my world. But we see the fire cannon picked up for Dresco, but I'm actually wondering if I've come onto a bit of a discovery here, because what happens, does this imply the existence of a water cannon, a wind cannon, and an earth cannon? And can we have the avatar of all cannons? Discuss, 15 marks.
I've not seen Avatar.
Okay, well, that has completely stumped me in everything I want to do here,
We've had this before, Nightmare. I've told you, I have never experienced any part of popular culture at all. My brain is just filled with League of Legends, and that's it. I'm sorry, bro.
Well, yeah. Well, everything changed when the fire cannon attacked. But what happens with the fire cannon here? There we go. We've got one reference. Congratulations. But what happens with the fire cannon on your AD carries? That it allows you to fight for mid lane priority, very, very importantly. And I think what that has done, because let's tie this back to a bigger point that we've made already in terms of how are we going to approach these fights? What's going to happen with these big fights which AXIZ are trying to dive onto the Jinx with? Well, actually, if you don't have lane push to secure the setup for that, it becomes a lot more difficult. Now, we know that the side lanes, V3, have started to make some inroads towards, particularly with Unica. So sat 2-0-3 on the Lee Sin, trying to shut down some of those side lanes. But having the fire cannon to shore up your mid lane wave as well, I think that's actually quite a heads-up decision from V3, and I like that itemization choice and how it's going to affect one of the big win conditions in this game for the other team.
Well, it does mean that Hetel and Jesscode are actually getting first move towards this Drake, which is spawning in 30 seconds. A couple members of AXIZ potentially shadowing Tol2 down here on the bot side. Obviously, if our blue side team are able to pick this one up, put them to soul point, and Hex XL is not something that I'm going to complain about.
And particularly when you got the Akshan as well. If you ever go into an extended confrontation against Akshan with the extra slows and the extra damage, that's a pretty one-way trip to the danger zone. And V3, they have set up on this side of the map. Again, we said that they've fought around their side lanes. They've got themselves mid lane priority. They have themselves that set up on the objective now. What's that going to net them?
I think it's going to net them the objective, Nymera, as AXIZ don't seem particularly keen on contesting this, instead going for mid lane priority. Dicey fishing for a hook, but can't find it. So trading mid lane tower for second Drake. I don't think AXIZ are going to be too upset about this one, but obviously Soul Point would have been good.
Dress Code is caught out in a bit of a strange position, and that's a rocket for. Yep, cool. We love ourselves some. That's the Hanabi right there. That's the summer festivals. Although it's spring, we're just doing it out of time this year apparently.
Yeah, go for it.
But Dress Code's like sweet. I mean, you know. I know that we've had a couple of AD carries who've not been up there in terms of the DPM. Most of our AD carries have been doing fantastic, over 500 DPM.
Yeah.
Dress Code just, making sure that he's stat padding with his ult. Making sure that he's still in the equation.
Well, and if he's got high DPM, that means he's really good.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing. I mean, so what
I'm
subbed in on what I am subbed in on 2 minutes notice to come cast the game, and it's like, best look up some stats. I'm like, this guy's got low DPM. In fairness, that's actually quite relevant in my position. Luckily, I've actually watched some of this guy's games before. Didn't know if you knew that I actually watched this region. Crazy.
Sanchez.
I mean, there you go. He's just he's stat padding his kill involvement there.
No, so I do actually, I like that from Sanctuary. We don't often see this from Aphelios, and I think that's one of the big problems that we see with the Aphelios into Jinx matchup, is the Aphelios players don't tend to play it as aggressive if you need to. They don't get up in the face of the Jinx. They don't make her day difficult. We see Udabon do it, and I'm glad that we're seeing Sanctuary do it as well.
And particularly when you have something like a Gravitum changes this matchup a lot too, because you have the ability to tag on to someone running into your lane. But Gale Force is so important for this champion. Even trading Gale Force for Gale Force versus Jinx can be quite important in these fights. We'll see if there's any larger trade happening around here, but of course not. We're not allowed big fights in this game. Apparently, we've had precisely one of them, and everything else has been.
It was a banger. It was a
good one. It was really good. In fairness, it looked like my solo queue, and not in the most positive connotations for that one. But we're left again. I do think that the reason we've got a lower action game is because both these teams are aware of what happens when you commit to a fight. It is, if AXIZ don't find the target again, it's very dangerous to them. And V3 have started to split the map and try to contest these strong side lanes to try and get their own way into things. And Washed Out once again trying to commit on the sideline.
Hey, he's looking for it. Committing the Hextech Ultimatum, the Ignite as well. This is a full-on kill attempt, and I think he's gonna get it. And the flash as well. Beautiful solo kill.
Okay, so Washidai, someone that I know that you kind of point towards, is that actually Washidai's had a couple of good games so far. He's been one of the more stable members. Takes down his opposing lane opponent for that phase of play, whereas the other top player in Tol 2 was pushing out that side lane. And I do think that was good lane assignment. You understand that you can't fight the action, but maybe there's an angle to 1v1 the Rise on the other side of the map. What's that actually going to lead to, though? What it mainly leads to is, again, V3 just understanding that they have control over the map, and they're not going to be the ones that are going to be potentially punished by the heavy dive of a Realm Warp and a Hecarim charging at you.
Do you know what? There's a little bit of a catharsis there, seeing this tank Rise build, which has been so toxic. Tol 2
that's the person you can't fight there, buddy.
On Washidai will go forward with the charge there, pops the ultimate as well, and this is just going to be a solo kill.
There he goes, gets his comeuppance, and yes, you can fight one of those solo ladders, probably not the other one. It is, maybe not that one. It has the 2 item spike. It is actually going to be the more brawly defensive stats of the triple item combo that we see so much from Vayne in the last season, of the Rage Blade coming in third on top of the Wits, and of course the Lifesteal Mythic of the Shield Bow. But what this has opened up now, with Washidai being down for another 20 seconds, is a potential Baron start for AXIZ. Now you start asking, what are the engage options for 3-3? You don't have a big engage, but that's a pretty good chunk.
It's a good start to the fight. Dress Code already with a reset, already with a little bit more attack speed, move speed, and damage. But the fight is not going in favor of V3, as here comes the Realm Warp diving on forward. Patel now forced to run away. That looked good at the start for V3, but when you're playing in an outnumbered fight, it doesn't go your way. And with Washidai TPing into the bot lane,
they've just given up on the Baron.
They've just given up on the Baron.
And I think this is very, very intelligent play for AXIZ. Yes, we could have asked more of them to try and dive maybe onto the mid lane, collapse on their lanes a little harder. But in this moment, they realize, okay, we've shut down the side lane threat, and Camille is the big disruptor in these team fights. If we start the Baron and they come into us, the cards are in our hands. I mean, Yujo, credit to him, actually does a really good amount of damage, and that gives you a very early reset onto Jinx. Normally, you think, okay, reset on Jinx, this is danger at this point. But with the Hecarim cleaning up the rest of that fight, you don't have a front line to play around. You don't have the ability to stand and fight. And with the Realm Warp to follow up after, rarely do we see that in these kind of moments. AXIZ, they conducted that fight much better than I would have given them hope for earlier into it. I think that's very heads-up play.
But on the back half of it, V3 have actually managed to get a decent ingress towards this straight. Yu-Gi-Oh! Waiting on the side, flanking, looking for a pick, trying to catch out one of these members. Megamin is very tanky, though. Probably not going to be him. It really needs to be either Sanctuary or told to.
It does, and again, we said that V3, one of the things that they're doing well before that last fight was controlling the game, getting priority, and making sure they had the objective set up. Now, AXIZ, they found success when they were being engaged into last time. Might not have the same angle here, but the solo lanes have found a flank.
Looking for Megamin as Swamp is actually going to pull back Washida into the rest of his team. Has gone into the golden Zonya's pop there. We'll still go forward and get the Ignite down onto Swamp, but he's still going to get taken down in the end. That's the flank from Asham, but he gets caught out by the hook for the Thresh, and here comes Yujo. He's going all over the place. Unica is going to be the last man standing for V3.
Okay.
The onslaught of shadows from Swamp somehow works, somehow secures the kill. That's a Drake for AXIZ, and they're going to be pushing down the mid as well.
And I can respect the approach from V3. Use your solo laners, try and find an angle onto the backline, find the miracle flank. They're spotted out, they're collapsed on. AXIZ will take themselves to 3 and 8 and give themselves some serious good position in the race for the last playoff spot.
Yeah, those death timers are just a little bit too long at this stage in the game. V3, they had some good moments, they had some strong individual performances, but at the end of the day, it's AXIZ grabbing the win.
It's in only just over 30 minutes as well. It was fairly short and sweet as far as the meta goes at this point. You know, we had ourselves some fun. We had ourselves a bit of a sleeper early game into some bigger team fights. We had ourselves some missed Avatar references. I think we had ourselves some fun middle cut.
Do you know what? I think we did. I think we did. It was an enjoyable game. Possibly not the highest level League of Legends that has ever been played on this stream.
Not.
But as it stands, still a whole bunch of fun to watch. We are going to be heading to a short break now. But when we come back, we'll be on the desk with J-Real to help break down that game.
and welcome back once again. AXIZ versus V3, a little bit longer than last time, but still some good excitement. I will say, random feels like a little bit of the key word of the day for this one. The mid-team fight. Let's start there. We'll start with the Chimera. Why?
So the way that I work as a caster is when something weird happens on screen, I try and see it through the lens of the team and understand why they're doing it. And I can kind of see what V3 are doing in this, where they're trying to fight for mid priority because that allows them to kind of play more safely around the side lanes and then not get dove onto. And then they get baited in by this hook cancel that happened in mid lane without realizing that they don't have the ability to move from their side lanes to mid lane quicker, because they had mid lane sorted, but you don't want to be pushed too far up because then Hecarim excels at that. Akshan gets to roam around with his W when he's close to train 2, when he's moving towards like the scoundrel target and all this other stuff. So this became such a mess because V3 had a decent game plan at that point. Like, sweet, we can set up with mid priority, set up for objectives through that. But then they baited themselves in and just saw red a little bit, and that was the one fight which kind of effectively lost them the game, sadly. After that point, just kind of fell apart.
Yeah, and I will say quickly, I know you haven't seen Avatar, Middlecop, but hopefully you've seen Finding Nemo, because it kind of reminded me of the seagull scene where it was just like, fight. Like, so yeah, that's kind of the impression that I got from that one there. It was, yeah, a little bit random, but obviously if you're an AXIZ fan, it came out pretty good. Obviously, Blue Buff kind of MVP, keeping the listeners alive. But let's move a little bit faster now onto the 27-minute mark pre-Nash fight. That was a little bit more composed, a little bit more justified as a fight. And once again, AXIZ finding some good team fighting, picking up the win, and then smartly turning onto the Baron. Do you feel like AXIZ seem to be a team that with a lead can basically win a lot of games, but they just don't find themselves leads?
I think that's fair. Obviously, it's a bit more difficult to talk about this team in the context of the wider season because obviously they have brought in Toltu to replace Yellow-Yoshi, and I think it was a very, very different style from than what we've usually seen from AXIZ. But hey, it worked out well for them this game. That fight around the Baron, it looked pretty rough for them at the start, but they were able to clean it up at the end. And once they got that Baron, game was basically over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, both of the fights which happened, I can actually understand like the thought process behind them, if not the execution, because the execution gets a bit weird, particularly in that first fight. But the second one, you can understand as a side of AXIZ where you're thinking, well, what actual ability to engage do they have? You're looking at like a miracle thrash kick and then Camille's dead. So you don't even have to worry about the Camille at that point. So because Camille had done that solo lane trade in the bot lane, I'm sure we got stuff to talk about that later. But yeah. With AXIZ just saying, look, they don't have a great way to engage onto us. Let's just go towards that Baron. They can't afford to let us do it. That was a good call from them. Obviously, it gets a bit crazy when you've got Yu-Gi-Oh very nearly chunking someone out and killing them for and obviously Jinx getting the kill to get excited. But AXIZ, on the whole, chose their fights pretty well when they were handed to them. And I think that's a positive for them to take away.
And bringing up V3, again, another loss. Not feeling good for them. I made a joke being 0-21 would be kind of impressive, but no one wants to see that. Let's talk about Washington though. I feel like it was a pretty good performance.
And we were talking about sort of in the pregame in Champion Select as well as V3 being a team that hasn't really found an identity, hasn't really found a player that can step up. Yes, you got to put a couple of asterisks on this performance. Washidai, he was laning against obviously a sub top laner coming in, and AXIZ. Not exactly a Sengoku or a Burning Court or a DFM, but he looked damn good. Grabbing that solo kill onto Megamin was beautiful, and it makes me a bit more confident that we aren't going to see the 0-21 split, because if V3 have someone that they can play around, and if it ends up that Washidai is that player, that's something, right? That's somewhere where you could put resources and go, this is going to be a win condition for us at some point this game.
And just to revisit what we said in pregame as well, well, at least the point which I've been pushing in terms of that, AXIZ have committed to an identity for most of this split. Now, they've been very stylized, right? They're not committed to, they're not content rather to go towards like, the Victor Corki meta in the early split and blah, blah, blah. For V3 to have something to build off of, to potentially go towards, we're going to go hyper carry through top with something like a Camille, or I don't know, maybe he can pull out something like a Gangplank later, go towards the Alfari style of play, right? I think that is something to I mean, both teams have something to take away from this game, even though the game was not that clean.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like AXIZ, Sanchu has been a name that I feel like has kind of like been the pop-up for them. Is there still a little hope in that? Obviously, a pretty nice Aphelios performance for him today.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that Middlecart called it out well with the attempted solo kill in the mid lane, but when you have Gale Force as Aphelios, you have really high kill pressure in 1v1 scenarios, because not just because of the extra kind of damage on it, but also when you don't have stuff like the Calibrum, you can kind of use that to get into range. There are plenty of weapon combinations which can allow you to get very snappy bursts out of, when you can kind of like switch between 2 or 3 weapons using your abilities on all of them and get yourself like a huge damage combo. Now, it didn't work out in this game in terms of the solo kill, but the fact that they're thinking about that and they're going towards it, and Sangchu has started to string together some actual decent performances. I think he's been one of the better AD carries again in this region, which is been pretty damn good in terms of AD carries. It's good to see that mindset is there, and hopefully can carry that into some of the more difficult games, which they're going to have to take outside of the bottom place team.
This is what I like. It's ideas that we're seeing from AXIZ. We're seeing sort of the roots of strategy, right, and tactics is what we're seeing from them right now. Obviously, different styles switching up a little bit, but if they're able to build on sort of these blocks that we're seeing from them, these small ideas, I think we could look at a team that could sit comfortably in mid-table by the end of the split.
You know, definitely looking positive for them, and they are able to now separate a little bit of distance between them and the soft.
That's big. That's big.
So they are keeping that 6th spot warm and very to themselves. To be honest, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, but they're going to be pretty happy with that. You know, they're going to be able to stay in playoff contention at this moment in time. We'll see if they can pick up more wins. But we're going to throw to a quick break. We will be coming back with our final game of the day. CGA, I know Middelcourt's going to be happy about that, versus Burning Core. And I believe we're actually going to get Oak, or maybe we'll just have definitely not an Imera once again.